morning. Tim's already jumping ahead of me. He says no forgiveness here. Yes, sir. I was just talking to Cameron a few minutes ago, and I was telling him I want to do this, not this show, but this topic again with he and Mario both on here with so that they can argue the Christian perspective on forgiveness and its values generally. Oh, hey, that comment guy. Thanks for joining us this morning. Good morning. Formerly here to lurk. Okay. Yes. So we're going to talk a little bit this morning about the idea of forgiveness, because you're going to hear it. You're going to hear people say, okay, Donald Trump won, the election's over, campaign's over. Now it's time to come together as Americans and forget the past. No, it's not. It's important to understand what's going on here and what conservatism means. Part of what it means to be a conservative, and this is why we do things like voluntarily enter into monogamous relationships, engage in contract, right? Take actions, pay debts, assume responsibilities, process consequences. Consequences are extraordinarily important, right? Jordan Peterson famously has talked about, in fact, I think the exact quote almost verbatim is, like, everybody's constantly going on about rights. They just cry and whinge about their goddamn rights, and nobody ever talks about responsibility, right? You do not have any rights, none, which do not include a related responsibility. Even the very most basic right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or as it was originally intended to be framed, life, liberty, and property. You have a right to your life, liberty, and property. We have a responsibility that is incumbent with that is connected with that, right? Even at the most basic level, you have the right to live, but that comes with a responsibility as well. Yeah, you have the right to live, but your right to live does not in any way impose upon me a requirement or an obligation to support that life. I don't have to feed you. I don't have to house you, clothe you. Now, that's not saying that I shouldn't, right? It is certainly a nice thing to do if you can afford to house, feed people, right? Now, personally, I've got a wife and 4 kids. I house and feed them. And that is my responsibility, precisely because I voluntarily exercised the right to engage in that contractual obligation and to produce those children. And having done that, I have assumed the related responsibility. So what we've seen over the last 4 years and 8 years is an exercise which has consequences. Now we're getting into a place where a person exercised actions to which they had no right and for which there are consequences. And this is basically what I wanted to talk about this morning anyway, but then I was actually watching Tim Pool late last night, and he brought up this tweet. So I want to show this to you because it very neatly summarizes a big and important part of this conversation. In 2016, there was no peaceful transition of power. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the Democratic Party weaponized the FBI, DOJ, and the legacy media to frame Donald Trump as a Russian agent. That's what happened. So
there was no peaceful transition of power. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the Democratic Party weaponized the FBI, DOJ, and the legacy media to frame Donald Trump as a Russian agent. They lied to a FISA court multiple times to secure wiretaps and surveillance on Trump and his team. For years, federal agency heads fed disinformation to the media to undermine the duly elected president, the first populist outsider in recent history. The same media that dismissed Hunter Biden's laptop as Russian disinformation, perpetuated the "very fine people" hoax, and portrayed Joe Biden as sharp as a tack, also lied to the public about the integrity of the 2020 election. Russiagate, along with disinformation campaigns and social media censorship from the left, fueled widespread distrust and deep frustration with our institutions, ultimately leading to the events of January 6. Meanwhile, the left supported BLM protests that caused billions in damages across American cities, yet continues to focus on January 6 because they are obsessed with smearing President Trump and his supporters while projecting moral superiority. For Trump supporters, who now represent the majority of the country, there was no peaceful transfer of power in 2016. Russiagate was always seen as the real insurrection, a coordinated attempt by the Washington establishment, unelected bureaucrats, and national institutions to overthrow the American people's choice for president.
I mean, it's that simple. To be clear, what just happened is I copied this tweet and pasted it into an AI video generator to make that video, and I shared it with Kanakoa the Great to say, hey, your shit's a little TLDR, but people watch videos, so here, share this thing instead. So, Sergeant Major says in her speech yesterday, Harris basically called for insurrection. And let's not forget, Jamie Raskin just a few weeks ago told a book club that if Donald Trump wins the election, that he and his allies in the Congress and in the Senate will refuse to certify him. They will simply not allow him to become president. And that is something that's still on the table, by the way. Don't let anybody lie to you. Donald Trump won this election with an unbelievable popular mandate. But the entrenched enemy is still there and still has their hands on the levers of power. So risk still exists. Not until the inauguration passes are we out of the woods. Make no mistake about that. There will be, I guarantee, there will be lawsuits. There will be moves to try and draft some kind of disqualification mechanism. I would not be surprised to see an impeachment filed against Donald Trump before the inauguration. Right, probably before the end of this month. If I bet a paycheck it's already been drafted. The comment guy says they can't refuse. The FBI's own published report said J6 was not an insurrection. There are no 14A grounds. Raskin is an idiot. I don't disagree on your assertion about the law. But I ask you this question, in rebuttal: when has the law meant anything to a Democrat? Let's not forget, in theory, the current president of the United States is Joe Biden, who has said on multiple occasions that despite the Supreme Court ruling against his maneuver, that he intends to go forward. Right? He did it on the eviction moratoriums, and he did it on student loan forgiveness. And in both of those cases, and in the case of the student loan forgiveness, on multiple occasions, the Supreme Court weighed in and said, no, this is not an authority that you have. You do not have the right or the authority to take this action, and must therefore not take this action. And Joe Biden held a press conference in all of those cases and said very clearly, I don't care what they say. I don't care what the law says. I'm going to do it anyway, and they can just catch up later. So don't forget, those are the people we're talking about. So to the idea of forgiveness, let's go through the list of grievances. This is why I so like this tweet, is he gives an actual list of grievances. They lied to FISA court multiple times to secure wiretaps and surveillance on Trump's team. For years, federal agency heads fed disinformation to the media to undermine the duly elected president, the first populist outsider in recent history. Right? It went on and on. They conducted an ongoing shadow campaign and essentially maintained an active shadow government conducting a coup against President Trump throughout the entirety of his first term. And they will try to do that again. So, the idea of forgiveness? No. I haven't talked about this a lot on the show, but one of the quarrels I have with Christianity generally is the idea of absolution. It offends me that anyone, even God, supposes that he can forgive a debt that is owed me without me being made whole. That's the problem with absolution, with forgiveness generally. Same thing with the student loan debts. That's a great material example to look at. If you forgive the student loan debt, which is to say that the American government comes in and simply pays those bills for the people who incurred that debt, then what's happening there is the people to whom that debt was owed, they're being paid, and the people who owe the debt are not suffering any consequences for their actions. Now that's a problem, because it means that the people who owed the debt were able to take actions for which they knew consequences and then not have to suffer those consequences. On the other side of that, when you talk about straight absolution, as as in the extreme case, the obvious case of the idea of God forgiving sins, well, what about the person against whom you sinned? Right? Because crime is harm. Sin is sin, crime is harm. If you can't show a victim, you can't show harm, you can't have a crime. This was the biggest obvious problem in the Trump fraud case in New York, is all of the alleged victims, which were the banks who made loans, which were then alleged to have been taken in bad faith by accusing Donald Trump of having misrepresented the value of the properties. All of the banks that made those loans came out and said, whoa, no, we were not misled. We did our own due diligence. He stipulated in the original application that we needed to do our own due diligence. We did. We came to terms. We made loans. He paid the loans. We made a shitload of money, and we want to do it again. There are no victims. Ergo, no crime. No harm, no victim, no crime. Right? But let's say that he was actually guilty, and we decided not to prosecute. We said, you know what? It's an honest mistake. We forgive you. Well, now those banks don't get paid. Right? If I show up and shoot a video for you, right, and you don't pay me for the video after, what's it been, Thomas, about a year and 3 months? And I forgive the debt because I'm just tired of asking you to pay your damn bills. Well, not you, Thomas, different Thomas. Well, okay, so you don't have to pay the bill because I'm tired of chasing you, and I'm not gonna waste the money on small claims court. I'll just file the 1040 Echo Charlie as a write-off and be done with it. Well, I still don't get paid. I, the victim, am not made whole. That's an important distinction to make, okay? So, let me take a minute. I just came to the end of a train of thought, so before I get back into it, let me take a minute and just say good morning. I see Your Majesty, good morning. I see Southdown Leatherworks joins us. Southdown, I'm not going to use your real name right now unless you make a comment to the contrary. I know that some of these are aliases where I know who the person is, and I know that they're using an alias for a reason. But I also know that with Southdown Leatherworks, that's a business name. So I don't think I'd be outing you from a handle if I was to say who you are. But make a comment down below, and I'll shout out the business if you're good with that. But that comment guy, good morning, brother. Patrick, good morning, sunshine. I talked to Patrick yesterday. And I wish we could get Patrick on the show more often. And yeah, he said, Southdown says, well, I did see Patrick and Megan get on YouTube, LOL. Yes, they are in fact here. I see Megan's with us. Good morning, sunshine. Tim, I already commented about. Mom's there. Good morning, Mom, and happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. Captain Jack Swallows, I believe you are a new addition to the family here. Do please like, share, and subscribe. Follow on whatever you're watching from Twitch. We get some traffic from Twitch, but most of my traffic here is from X and YouTube, a little bit from Facebook, where, by the way, Ethel, good morning, sunshine, and Thomas Waller joins us this morning. I've gone out of order, so now I'm not sure if I've said hey to everybody. Uncle Steve, good morning. Hey, Uncle Steve, I have been looking into the drone, and the drone that you got, I'm still trying to understand how a few things work, because if I understand it correctly so far, I do have lenses that will work with that camera, but because the camera is mounted on that kind of gimbal, then we're going to need to get, there's basically weighted rings that screw onto the front of a lens where a filter would normally go, and weighted backplate for the camera that's mounted on the gimbal to offset the front heavy weight of the lens on that gimbal. And so I'm still trying to get my head around how to select those weights correctly and order parts for us to make use of that drone. Uncle Steve got his hands on a badass drone, and I cannot wait to get it out to the farm or somewhere and put that sumbitch in the air, because it is a beast. Okay, and Southdown says you're welcome to Outby. So Southdown Leatherworks. So y'all know, Southdown Leatherworks, I take some responsibility for the name of the business. That is our good friend Dave Northup. And I used to, his last name being Northup, I used to crack jokes about the age-old feud between the clans of Northup and Southdown. I even used those names for clans, dwarven clans, in a fantasy novel that I started writing a few years ago. So Southdown Leatherworks, put the URL down for your business. Dave Northup, Gandhi makes some absolutely beautiful leather top hats, leather flat caps, leather cuffs, all kind of, leather work. And it's a hobby that he told me he picked it up as a hobby during COVID and is making a go of it as a business. And I couldn't be more proud of you, brother, for your creative endeavor and pursuing that. You get out there and chase that fucking green dragon, baby. Make your money. I hope it works out for you. And yeah, y'all go check out Southdown Leatherworks. He's on X. He shares some images on X. I've been getting after him a little bit about getting his stuff onto other platforms like Instagram. We'll have to work on producing the images necessary for that. So now let's talk about the forgiveness strategy. No forgiveness. Because here's what happened. Over the last several years, it is not just that Donald Trump's political enemies were chasing him and treating him uncouthly. It wasn't like it was just ruthless engagement in the political process. These people, these lawyers, these attorneys, your what's her name? AG Tish. I can't think of the names, but Judge Engeron, Fannie Willis, Tish something in New York. All these corrupt AGs, like Jack Smith has already been fired, and the January 6th cases associated with Jack Smith have been dropped. That's already been done. That's at the federal level. In the lower courts, you had the Stormy Daniels case, you had the fraud case, you had the alternative voters cases, you had the election interference case out of Georgia, et cetera, et cetera. All of those cases were clearly malicious prosecution, right? We keep hearing he was convicted on 34 felony counts. Letitia James, thanks, Dad. AG Letitia James out of New York. But like oh, well, he was convicted of 34 felonies. No, he absolutely was not. That statement is false. Even if you accept the conviction as it's written, that statement is false. What he was convicted of were 34 alleged misdemeanors, which were not proved and were not eligible for prosecution because of the statute of limitations, which were then illegally converted under a novel legal theory to felonies based on the presupposition that if, under the law, based on the presupposition legally that those misdemeanors were committed in the furtherance of a felony, and then the judge instructed the jury that you can find that it is the case that they were committed in furtherance of a felony without agreeing unanimously on what that felony was. This is false. This is not an opinion that I hold. This is the opinion that has been reiterated by the Supreme Court. It was a crime for Engoron to instruct the jury thusly. He broke the law by instructing the jury to break the law, and then the 34 Trump convictions are all convictions without an accusation. So the refrain, oh, Donald Trump's a 34 times convicted felon. He's not. That's a fucking lie. What Engoron did there was crime. At a minimum, it was malicious prosecution. But it was obviously also election interference. And that's the thing with all these cases. Now we've seen the appellate court speak. They haven't issued a determination, but they have spoken on the New York fraud case. And by the end, we've talked about this on the show, so I won't rehash it too much. Just in summary, by the end of the appellate court appeals process, excuse me, when the Democrat lawyers were making their closing statements, they had essentially given up on trying to prove their case and were arguing with the court that they should not be sanctioned because it's important for lawyers to be able to bring novel cases in order to develop the law, which to me sounds a hell of a lot like it's important for jurists and lawyers and legal scholars who are not elected to be allowed to legislate from their law offices, which is a psychotic interpretation of the intent of the law, and for that there should be no quarter. Those lawyers, the judges, the lawyers, the prosecutors, everybody. In fact, the police officers who actually effected the arrest on Donald Trump to get the mugshot in Georgia, they should be treated like a soldier following an unlawful order. Because we do not in this country or anywhere else in the world, thanks to the Nuremberg, accept the defense, I was just following orders. Fuck you. We don't accept that. In part because, last I checked, let's see. Not a Nazi. So, I don't want to see these guys merely sanctioned. It is not sufficient. What they have done is they have engaged in an open coup against the United States of America and open, naked election interference through malicious prosecution. I want to see them ruined. They need to be incarcerated. They need to be arrested, tried, and once found guilty, which they should be on the obvious merits and evidence, for the crimes of election interference and malicious prosecution, every one of them should be utterly and completely ruined, bankrupted, disbarred, disrobed, and incarcerated for a long term. Engoron should never breathe free air again. Disrobed, disbarred, bankrupted, and incarcerated. Every single one of them. Because what they did was not mere legal malpractice. They conducted warfare against the United States citizens. They should be treated like any foreign influence. They should be treated like a large conspiracy to conduct a coup. Sergeant Major says, disbarred but not incarcerated, let them work for survival wages. There is a practical part of me. I'm a devout capitalist, right? I live in the divine autocratic capitalism of the United States, where the dollar is almighty God and possessions are 9/10 of your commandments. Thank you very kindly. So there's a big part of me that would love to say not incarcerated, because that costs taxpayer money. In theory, I could do a whole show on that. But and so yeah, it would do me good at an emotional level to see them merely ruined and left to attempt to scratch by on, fry cook, survival wages, like Dad said. But the point here is not to hurt these people. As much as I want to see these people hurt, as much as it will do me good emotionally, do the country good emotionally, to see the pain, to see them ruined, I think the incarceration piece is important here. And since we got Donald Trump, which means we're going to stop sending money to at least Ukraine and pretty quickly to Israel, that's a whole nother conversation. But we've already seen, I'll come back to this. We're already moving though, but we're already moving in the right direction economically. Already. Trump has been president-elect for just over a day, and we're already seeing positive economic results from that fact. But the Uncle Steve, you're talking to the darker places in my soul. I would absolutely underwrite flogging these people with a cat of nine tails in a public square on a live stream. In fact, I'd take it a step further. Food trucks, concessions, pay-per-view, make money. There's nothing you can do that you shouldn't be. There's nothing worth doing that you shouldn't be paid for. Damn, you broke my train of thought. Oh, the reason that I think the incarceration angle is worth the money is because the point is consequences. Everything you've seen for the last 8 years, the Russiagate, the collusion hoax, the piss tapes, the lawfare, the multiple impeachment scams, both of which were based on fabricated evidence, all that. These things happened because there are no consequences. You've heard the joke about keyboard warriors, and we live in a world, because of the internet, that is becoming less and less civil every day, because we live in a world now where you can tell somebody, you can say something cruel and horrible to somebody and not get punched in the mouth. I'll leave it at that. I don't need to elaborate any further than that. But you can run your mouth without consequences, which brings me back to the whole point that I was making earlier. First Amendment, freedom of speech. Yes, you have a freedom of speech, but that has never meant freedom from consequences until the internet and the safe space thing. We can do a whole nother show on the importance of bully culture and why we need to bring it back, and what an absolute disaster for America, not just American masculinity and American men generally, but for America as an economic power. The whole anti-bullying maneuver has been an absolute disaster for America. And so we cannot continue to take that. And Sergeant Major, I don't know how much money Doug Emhoff made yesterday, but I know Donald Trump beat more women than he did. Actually, I don't know that. It appears that Doug Emhoff is a serial abuser, and as far as we know, Donald Trump has only beaten 2 bitches out of the house. But there we go. So the consequences need to be severe. We have lived without consequences for too long, and it has made our people less than. It has made them grotesque. It has made them immoral. It has made them intolerable. And so ruination must be the standard of the day. Absolute ruin. Ooh, Liberty Girl. Liberty Girl says tats on their foreheads. Okay, I'm gonna tell you all about this, and then I'm gonna go ahead and call it a day. There is a novel called Snow Crash, and it is about a dystopian post-apocalyptia where basically all the world governments have collapsed, and in this particular technological revolutionary dystopia, it is an anarcho-capitalist dystopia. So there are no more governments. There are only multinational conglomerates, businesses that operate like, yes, everyone listens to reason. That's right. So yeah, the whole world is ruled by these multinational pseudo business, pseudo governmental entities. And because that means that policing is very different, there are prisons, but those are also franchises. There are police forces, but those are also franchises. So you live in a community called a burbclave, you hire a franchise police force. If they have to arrest somebody within the community, if that person gets away from them outside of the community, there's no recourse. They're not in the community where there's jurisdiction, right? So they will go and contract with either the Clink or the Hooskow, no shit, to lock these people up. And if your crime is sufficiently egregious, as is the crimes of the main villain in the book, a character named Raven, that's when you get the forehead tattoo. And Raven's forehead has in big black block letters the words racially insensitive and socially volatile. And yeah. I might just brand each of these traitors with the word Cooper, COUP-ER, and run with it. Oh, Polak says he's read. I didn't know you read that. It's one of my favorite books. It's one of my favorite books ever. That's it. Poor Impulse Control. Racially insensitive. Oh, it's the old redneck that has the racially insensitive, socially volatile. Raven's forehead says Poor Impulse Control. Yes. But no, honestly, the book that I would look to for what we need to do would be Starship Troopers. Tie them up and flog them in the public square. Sell tickets, pay-per-view, concessions, make money. Be brilliant. Can you imagine how very interested organized criminals would be in organizing crime if they knew that their punishment would not just be brutal, but it would be profitable and entertaining? It might even work out like eBay insurance. Remember when eBay first came out, there were insurance companies that launched policies where you could insure your purchases or your sales on eBay. And those businesses didn't last very long because it turned out that they were so expensive that the market decided to make them basically decided to make them unnecessary by, holy shit, crazy, say, yeah, let's just be nice to each other. Let's just, actually pay the money we promised to pay for the product, and let's actually send the product we said we'd sell for the money. And that's how that worked. All right. Thanks for watching this morning, guys. I do have it on reasonably good authority that Cameron's going to join us tomorrow morning, and Hopefully I can get Mario 2. We'll have a three-peat in the morning for Firearms Friday. So y'all make sure you got a good hot cup of coffee at 07:30 mañana morning. Go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below wherever you're watching. Help us grow the channel. And guys, Donald Trump is the president. Donald Trump is the president-elect. We're going to have a better show because not all of the news has to be gloom and doom while Kamala and Joe are running around fucking up everything they touch. We're about to have a president that actually secures peace, improves the economy, and generally has a positive effect on the entire world. That means we get to have good news on the show. We got 4 years of good news coming. Thanks, guys. Thanks for getting out and voting and doing your duty. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.